Congratulations, it's your wedding day, and you are walking down the aisle in a beautiful white wedding gown covered in Cheeto dust. Imagine those wedding photos. Or it's graduation day here at the University of Georgia, and you're walking across that stage and you're barefoot. Now, you are heading to your first job interview and you got holes in your pants. Did you get that job? Now, take a moment and consider if key moments of your life were met with ill-fitting or no clothing, how would you feel? How would you perceive your value? I am grateful to be in the presence of clothed human beings right now. But for some of us in this room, what I just described mirrored our childhood. Clothing fostered fear, shame, and at times anger. And for others of us, while clothing was never an issue, we always knew that one child in our classroom, the one that came to school every day, smelling a certain way, wearing the same clothes, and unfortunately looking like the trauma that they are enduring. Those children with no shoes, holes in pants, reworn underwear are still among us, being unseen, undervalued, and unclothed. As a social worker for 15 years, I have seen and done it all, from conducting home visits at roach-infested homes to providing therapy to the moody and defiant teenager wanting to run away for the 15th time. I have professionally explored the unique yet complex ways humans experience life under distress. And throughout my career, I noticed that a portion of my low-wage check going to pay for the essentials of the children that I serviced. From shirts to pants to shoes, diapers and bottles, I've purchased it all. I assume the philosophy that if a family is on my caseload, those children are mine until safety is secured. And to meet the never-ending need, there would be times I would ask for donations from friends and family. But it was this process that influenced and motivated the prompting and creation of Carrie's Closet. Named after my mother, Carrie's Closet is a mobile clothing resource that takes donations from good folk like you and goes back into the community and clothes children for free. No stipulations and no questions asked. If a mother is expecting, we give the donated stroller. If a young man comes asking for khakis for his uniform slacks, we give the pants and the matching shirt. To date, Carrie's Closet has clothed roughly 4,000 children, both within the metro Atlanta area and within my hometown of Columbus, Georgia. And while doing this work, I noticed that healthy communities start with healthy children. And the foundation of a healthy childhood starts with 3 basic rights: safe housing, access to food, and appropriate clothing. We place a strong emphasis on shelter and food, but fail to stress the importance of clothing. And the rising cost is making it increasingly difficult for families to maintain these basic human rights. Currently, the average home in Georgia costs $320,000, and renting has increased by 32%. When it comes to accessing food, Georgia is one of the highest states of food insecurity, with an identified 35 food deserts in Atlanta alone. Families right now are fighting with the decision, do I pay rent or do I feed my children? And with these present challenges, clothing is becoming easily overlooked. We see children wearing hoodies as raincoats, wearing sandals in the wintertime, and we are witnessing diapers being stolen from local drugstores at an increasingly alarming rate, with the 11% increase in clothing prices. It is time that the nation acknowledges that we are indeed in a clothing crisis. As I share, children's clothes should be free of chips and noodle juice stains, because no child should look like hunger. Children should have shoes that fit so that they can run and play with their friends at field day. They shouldn't be limited to one pair because they don't have a home or a closet to put their clothes and shoes in, because no child should look like homelessness. And no child should be denied access to their clothing due to the actions of the adults in their lives that are supposed to be taking care of them, because no child should look like the trauma of abuse and neglect. We can do this within our communities. When we value clothing with the same respect as shelter and food, we will revive our communities through the outfitting of our children, one shirt, shoe at a time. Again, no child should look like the trauma that they're going through. But clothing has the power to identify those experiencing hunger. With the over 44 million people, to include 1 in 5 children experiencing hunger in America. We also have to understand that children who are experiencing that type of hunger don't always present as an emaciated child in the constant search of food. Sometimes children who are experiencing hunger can be of normal weight, but of poor nutrition. But if you're attentive enough, you can literally see the signs of food insecurity on the outfit of a child. I worked with a child who came to school just like this every single day. And at least three days out of the week, we would have to change the outfit in the school's clothing closet, not because the uniform was overworn or too small, but because it was starting to turn a shade of red-orange. One day, I asked the student, I said, "Who washes your clothes?" and tried to explain the constant stains. And he said, "All Mommy could afford from Family Dollar is Takis and noodles, and she throws away the dirty clothes." Then he said this, "It costs too much to wash them." Immediately, I felt stupid, guilty, and ashamed. How could I miss all the signs? I was a part of the problem. What I thought was an easy fix, just go to the laundromat and wash your clothes, was really an indicator of a bigger sign: hunger. Not only did my baby get clothes and extra, I was able to have a vulnerable conversation with the parents. The mother was very direct with me in sharing that working a minimum wage job doesn't afford the cost of rent, groceries, and food. Something had to give. And it was cleaning clothes. What if we use clothing as an indicator of hunger and food scarcity simply by surveying the hygiene of a child? How much more quicker could we address the 500,000 children experiencing hunger and food scarcity in America? One of the fondest memories that I had growing up was dressing up for church on big days. I'm talking about Easter, Christmas, Mother's Day, Youth Sunday. It didn't matter because I was cute. Pigtails in my hair, I had the velvet dress, I had the lace stockings and the patent leather shoes. I was the child that took the long way to the choir stand so that you could see me, my outfit, and my shoes. And if truth be told, much consideration was put into the shoes that you see before you today. And if you were honest with yourselves, your shoes had to matter when you stepped outside that house too. We take for granted the purpose of shoes. The American Academy of Pediatrics say that the primary function of shoes is to protect the foot from injury and infection. So when it rains, children need rain boots, dress shoes for picture day, and sneakers for field day. And the concept of shoes must be taken into greater consideration when we're talking about children whose feet are constantly growing. One day while on bus duty, the rain greeted our students before I could. And my favorite child got off the bus, and all I heard was squish, 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 sounds of little kindergarten feet. But the sound was a little bit different. It wasn't of rain boots, and it wasn't of rubber soles on sneakers. The sound was of these. My student came to school with socks and slides in the middle of a rainstorm. I didn't have enough time to address it right then and there, so my student went back to class. And when I was done with arrival duty, I went to my office to see that the teacher had a referral waiting for me. Not only was this child without appropriate shoes, but he also didn't have a raincoat, only a hoodie. And my years within this profession gave me a hint of what was really going on, and clothing was the least of this child's worries. Later on during that day, I conducted an unannounced home visit at the address that the family had on file, just to learn that the family did not live there. Called Mom, and she told me that they got evicted. So I still conducted that home visit, except for it was in the parking lot, at her car, where the family slept the night before. After doing some quick problem solving, we were able to identify a neighbor who would accept the family for a week while I secured emergency shelter. And unfortunately, stories like this aren't uncommon. In 2019, more than 39,000 students identified as homeless within Georgia schools. You see, children don't have to say anything to communicate that their family is under distress. Overworn and off-season shoes are often indicators of unhoused children. I have witnessed calloused, blistered, sore feet, and I have seen babies with blackened toenails due to poorly fitting shoes. How many more families could we service if we took children coming to school in flip-flops, in the middle of the rainstorm, in December, more seriously? Now, don't get me wrong. Clothing cannot be an indicator of all childhood abuse and neglect, and it will be irresponsible to assume so. A child could be appropriately dressed and still be experiencing hardship in the form of abuse. One of my most career-impacting experiences with clothes came from a middle school child. She came into my office. She was wearing khaki pants, white collared shirt, the fresh sneakers, and her purse. What's wrong here? She looked happy, healthy, and whole. She had it all together, at least on the outside. She shared with me that while her mother worked at night, her mother's boyfriend would come into bed and just lay next to her, making her feel afraid. She knew right then her world would change because I made it very clear with my students what a mandated reporter meant. The Department of Family Children Services came within 10 minutes, interviewed her and her younger sister, and the state deemed that sexual abuse was taking place in the form of grooming, and they were swiftly removed from the home and placed in emergency foster care home. After the case manager shared next steps, my student only had one question: when can I get my clothes? All that baby wanted was a jacket. But she nor her sister were allowed back in the home. And clothing is not worth risking the safety of a child. That child came to school fully clothed, not an indicator of abuse or sexual misconduct in sight. So we must not confuse a child being adequately clothed with being safe, because oftentimes those who mean harm to children will ensure that those kids are well-dressed in order to not raise questions. So how many more children could we protect from harm if we believed what came out their mouth instead of being distracted by what they wore? Better question: how many children in your life deem you a safe space to articulate threat and harm regardless of how they behave, and more importantly, what they wear? At the end of the day, we must value clothing as a human right, acknowledge its power to identify greater issues and support those organizations that are addressing those issues. Serving our children has never been about the lack of clothing. The clothing crisis never has and never will be an issue of availability. Instead, it's an issue of connecting quality clothing to the people who need it. Connecting our communities, our children with clean clothes, shoes, can be done. But right now, our families are struggling with paying rent and groceries. And so, it is up to us to be intentional with how we give so that we can ensure that our efforts are going back into the community. I know this isn't an easy ask and it's not the most time efficient, but when you link up with local community organizations and donate your in-season, clean, and of quality clothes instead of giving them to your corporate donation center, you are indeed serving the community because we are the community. And all we need is your treasure, time, and talent to ensure that the human rights of all of our neighbors are being met. And so, y'all, we can do this. We can do this. And we can work towards a world where no child looks like hunger. No child looks like homelessness. And certainly, no child looking like the trauma that they are enduring. We can do this, and we can revive our communities through the outfitting of our children, one shirt or shoe at a time. Thank you so much.